There's chairs up here.
My name is Jimmy, and I'd like to welcome everybody to the Farmville-Prince Historical Society tonight. Looks like we've got a good crowd. I'm going to make a few announcements here, and then we'll get started with our speaker. I want to remind everybody that something new tonight. We haven't had refreshments for a long time. So we got homemade cookies over there. Bob, my wife Pat, helping out with them tonight. I was up all night cooking them. So they're right over here in the corner. Feel free to get up and get them anytime you feel like it. Water, napkins, whatever we need there. They're yummy. Bob Frank is giving out the tickets, the red tickets for the door prizes. I believe we've got 9 door prizes to give away tonight. Make sure you have one of those little red tickets. Did anybody not have one yet? Raise your hand, Bob will bring you one. Donnie, you have one? Okay. All right, moving on. Also something new tonight, fundraiser for the Historical Society. Bill and Bob are selling raffle tickets. The amount taken in will be split 50-50. One winner get half the pot tonight. $1 buys one chance, and $5 gives you 6 chances. No limit to how many you can buy. See Bob or Bill there, and they will hook you up with a prize ticket. I want to tell you about what's coming soon and what's not. There will not be a meeting in September, so our next meeting will be October the 19th, which is a Tuesday night, third Tuesday night in the month of October. That meeting, I plan to have it hosted by Kay Whitfield and Caroline Stowers. Some of you may know her as Caroline Taylor. It's going to be about the homes on High Street. I'll give you a little bit of information. Back in 1985, when the Historical Society was formed, it was formed by Ms. Motley that had Motley Hardware, Bobby Martin that had Martin the Jewelers, and Dickie Crawley who had Greenfront, and several other people. And their main purpose to start with was, or one of the purposes was to have a historic district in Farmville. They also were working on getting the storefronts on Main Street fixed up better. Someone, I think it was Bobby Martin maybe, went around and designated an area all around High Street, Oak Street, Beach Street, up and down Main Street, several other streets. They took pictures like this one of how the homes looked in 1985. We came across the negatives over at Longwood here a couple of weeks ago. With some negatives and some that had been printed up. I don't think the historic district thing ever got off the ground with the houses, but we have all the old pictures that were taken all around town of all the homes. And so we decided to have a program on showing the old homes on High Street, what they look like in 1985 and what they look like today. And then Kay and Caroline, since they grew up in that part of town, they will narrate and tell a little bit about each house. There's so many, almost 300 pictures. So we're going to try to talk about 20 to 40 of the houses on High Street to start with. Starting at, let's see, don't have the picture of it, but the house at Oak Street, Appomattox, and High Street, the little intersection there. We'll start there and go up High Street, and then we'll see how that program goes. And if it's interesting, next year we'll try to show a few more of the old houses. But we also have pictures taken prior to '85, like this one was taken in 1912 when a hurricane hit the houses on High Street and destroyed a lot of them. And we have those, and we're going to look at those, and then we'll show you this house got kind of tilted over. There's what it looks like today. So every little house along the way has a story, so I'm going to let Kay and Caroline tell you about that. We also, for next year, we want to talk about, we've got several shows planned for next year already. We want to talk about the Dunnington Mansion, or some people call it Poplar Hill. We have a veterinarian who's been connected with a statewide organization trying to preserve that house. And we want to have a Zoom program where she can talk to us from Harrisonburg, where she lives, and tell us about her attempts to preserve that house. And maybe by that time they'll have sold it. We don't know yet. But that'll be coming up maybe in January next year. We'll see. Also, next year, every 5 years or so, it's been a tradition to celebrate the birthday of the train station, which we're sitting in tonight. We did the 110th. We did the 100th birthday here. We have pictures of the 100th and the 110th. We'll throw a little party for the 120th birthday sometimes next year, and hopefully Bob Clifford will help us with that one. Surprise. Since you were here for that too. Also, Bob is working on possibly 2 shows next year, the Civil War in the area. You want to tell them about the one over in Cumberland?
Dirk Warner, everybody knows, he is in this November issue that's out now of Civil War magazine. There's an article about Cumberland Church battlefield. And Dirk's efforts to try to preserve some of that as much as possible. So the article is out, you get a chance to see it. And he will talk to us in April, I think it was in April.
Next year.
And he'll tell us more about that. He'll have a friend of his up. They're going to show us some relics. We'll just talk about the efforts that they're trying to do, some kind of battlefield trust thing to kind of preserve pieces of the Cumberland battlefield.
That's what we're all about, is history preservation. Also, we may have a program on the Farmville Hospital, which was probably the first hospital in Farmville. And for those that didn't make it, we'll have also talk about the cemetery. For those of y'all that don't know, the Confederate hospital was right over there. So we might have a special speaker. It might end up being Bob and me. We'll see how that goes. Got some pictures. When we get on to tonight's program, Kat here, and Nat, Kat, Nate. He's going to be our featured speaker. So I'm going to let Kat tell us about a book she has written. And here it is. She's given us a copy. And she has them over here for sale by the door, and I'm going to turn it over to her.
Hi everyone, can you hear me? Yeah.
Hello.
My name is Nat Carter. I immigrated from the Philippines in 2018. I work as a registered nurse here in Central Southside Community Hospital.
You got my phone.
Yeah.
Whether we cut it up a little bit more.
Should be on.
We'll get you going here. Right.
Can you hear me? No. Wait, you answered. Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Nat Carter. I immigrated from the Philippines in 2018, and I work as a registered nurse in the Central Southside Community Hospital. I like art mainly. I do painting and photography. So I'm proud to present to you my photo book of Farmville, Virginia. It's entitled Farmville, Virginia. I started taking photographs around Farmville during the height of COVID 2020, and then I would just go around Farmville, take pictures of houses, landscapes, and then I would also take candid photos of the residents of Farmville. And some of them, like I would ask my friends if I could take their portraits. So you can see some of my friends in the photo book also. I took most of the pictures using film. And here in my book, you can see photos of Farmville in different seasons, Farmville landscapes, houses and trees, and then portraits. And actually the picture that I really like in this photo book is a picture of a family. They approached me in the Walmart parking lot while I was taking photos, and then they wanted me to take their portrait. So it was really nice, and the kids were very relaxed, and the mom was really very interesting. And I kind of regret not taking her portrait because she's very interesting. Like she has a cowboy hat, a cowboy boots, just walking around the Walmart parking lot. So this photo book has a good mix of black and white and colored photos. And by 2021, I felt like I have enough content material for the photo book. So, but it took me like 3 months to finally decide on the final design of the pages and the cover page. I had to ask several people. I had to find out which website I could use. And after 3 months, I'm finally content with the design. So I decided that I'm going to have a colored background on each of the page, and it's either going to contrast or complement the picture on the page. So I was quite pleased with the results, and I couldn't be any happier, and I'm really, really happy to dedicate this work for the town of Farmville, Virginia. And I am also very grateful to be able to be given a platform to share my work. And I would like to thank the Farmville Historical Society for inviting me over. So if I have a table over there, so if you want to purchase or just see my book, I'll be over there. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Generally, we don't have the occasion to speak much about donations, but since our last meeting, we've had a couple of unexpected donations come in, and Bob, would you tell them about the donation that came in from, I guess we would call it the Knoll family?
That's what I call it, the Knoll family items. These donated to us by a lady named Martha Steele, lives down in South Carolina. And basic family, personal effects for Knoll family, consisting of, number one is a thumb drive, which has all kinds of Knoll family pictures and genealogy on it. A collar iron, a pair of vintage baby boots. Two old dogs, very old. Child's tea set. One coat of arms frame. A bag of cufflinks, jewelry, Eastern Star items. A bag of postcards, souvenir folder pages, a grouping of cabinet cards and family photos. One collection of women's purses, really neat flapper looking stuff here. A curling iron, one quilt, and a very unique knitted blanket. So, they donated us to do what we can with it, and here it is. You're welcome to go through it and look at it. And also there was a book, another book I'd like you to be aware of. It's actually been out in print for 5 days. There it is. Get in there. Who knows who George Knopf was? Besides Richard. There's Joe here. Where's Joe? You want to know, ask Joe. No. Joe, you know who George Knopf is?
No, I'm white.
Okay.
What's the last name?
Knopf. K-N-A-U-F-F.
That was the guy that made pianos
There you go.
in Farmville, Virginia, and I saw, I believe this morning when I was looking at a story on television of Elvis Presley, there was a white piano in his room at his home that was that brand.
Well,
I'm glad you asked.
the book has been out there for 5 years now. It's called George P. Knopf's Virginia Reels and the History of Virginia Fiddling. And the significance to George Knopf for us is he used to live here in Farmville in the 1830s. He made pianos, played fiddle, taught. He ended up over at the Buckingham Collegiate Female Institute, taught there. His house here in Farmville burns down in 1836. Kind of rebuilds somewhere, keeps making pianos before he leaves. He married Anne Bondurant, and they had 3 children together. But one thing I learned about reading on this, 2 things significant was, going through here, I see a piece of sheet music with a song entitled The Old Maid, or When I Was a Girl at 18 Years Old. Familiar to me. Yeah, I forgot, but this guy contacted me one time. He came to Farmville researching George Knopf, and he interviewed him for what I knew. This is the only thing of George Knopf I've ever found, a piece of sheet music of his with his label up top here. Because he had something called a fancy store. So he sold all kinds of knickknacks and doodads and musical stuff in particular. But he's like the only piano manufacturer between Baltimore and New Orleans, in Farmville, all places. I'd love to see if there was a surviving example of one of his pianos or his fiddle somewhere. I thought that was very interesting. And the other thing I take that I got from this was fiddle tunes were everywhere back then, but very few of it ever been set down to music. You'd have an exact fiddle tune up in Pennsylvania would be called something. Same tune in Virginia would be called something else. So he took these tunes and put music to them, put them all down on paper. And that way, kind of made a living selling tunes and things, and put together a big thing on Virginia reels. So if you get a chance, that's another one to look for. And you can look at my copy here as well.
Where was the location of his place?
Thanks, Jimmy, I'm glad you asked, because I always thought it was down there about where the old post office in line with AME Church, but actually it was on the other side of the street, right where the State Theater was. That's where George Knopf, before the Robertsons got it, the fertilizer people, who then sold it later for the Echo Theater Room. So it seems to me the stage, being as musical guy as he was, probably be more appropriately maybe named after this guy, George Knopf, but I'm sure all that came up later. That's fine.
If you want to learn more about this gentleman, go on the internet and look up the Female Collegiate Institution in Buckingham County, as he was a significant figure and a professor there, as Bob has said, and I even think he wrote maybe a song for the school while he was there as well.
Well, it's the Buckingham Grand March. I've got
That's it.
on eBay right now.
Right.
Actually, that was Andre Arnaud, the guy that was the president. He's the guy that actually wrote that. But I'm sure Knopf had something to do with it. But anyway, very interesting. And I want to email this guy, because I still have his address. Maybe, who knows? He lives in Slidell, Louisiana. You never know. If he's in Virginia, maybe he could do a program for us, play fiddle tunes, because when I see stuff like that, that means nothing to me. I can't imagine what it sounds like. Love to hear some of these tunes played.
Okay. When we get a donation like these items here, I want to let everybody know that they go over to Longwood College, and we have an agreement with the college. They take the items in, catalog them, and they store them in the basement of the library in a room where they store all the Longwood's items in this fireproof, humidity set, and so on. And as time permits, they put some of the items, they photograph them and put them up on their website, on the Longwood website. So anything that's donated here is preserved over at Longwood. And I'd also like to mention that since our last meeting, we received a very large donation from Karen Caden at Karen's Bridal Store, and I would like to thank Karen for that. And now I'm going to turn it over to Nat.
Let me say one thing before.
Yeah.
LD was talking about the collegiate papers, and we're talking about Knopf's Piano Factory. In our archives, there is original music from Knopf. It's over at Longwood. It's in the archives, and it was donated by Mrs. Jones. She's deceased, but her family.
Virginia Jones?
Yes, but it's in the archives. If anybody wants to make a study of it.
All right, give us just a few minutes to get our ducks in a row here. My wife Sue is the AV team for tonight. We're going to try to Zoom this presentation so my sister Rachel in Seattle can see. And, oh. Rachel, you can't see this, but 50 people are looking at you. She's in her bedroom. All right, I got some notes on my phone here. All kinds of paraphernalia. Excuse me a second while I get settled
We have a few more seats up front here.
Turn on. Please use the mic.
On or off?
You want me to mic up? Sure.
Hey, that's better.
Bill, you have enough light?
It makes for a silhouette is all I'm getting.
You better maybe got the lights on over top of you where you got
Some lights in the rear.
two sets.
It's just a glare.
What are you thinking of that? Oh!
No.
Hello! Can you hear me in the back? Okay. Wow.
Can you hear me in the back? Okay. Wow. All right, this is exciting, folks. All right, bear with me here. Great. Well, let's get started. My name is Nat Carter. I work at Taylor Forbes Equipment here in town.
Sorry, that's your
Okay.
camera.
Oh, thanks. So Taylor Forbes is a local agricultural lawn and garden power equipment dealer. I'm here with my dad, Earl Carter, who I work with, and my cousin George Carter, who I work with. And tonight we're going to start off by talking about 0% financing and all the exciting new products that Taylor Forbes. No? Okay. Now let's talk about the Carter family, more specifically the Carter family of Buckingham County, really, in Prince Edward County. We're going to go back about 7 generations tonight. So full disclaimer, I'm a very amateur genealogist. I got interested in this a few years ago and just signed up for an Ancestry.com account. But I was fortunate that we have this fabulous document here in the family, genealogy or addendum to the history of the Carter family by James Nathaniel Carter Jr., Jim Jr. He spent 5 or so years of his life researching, traveling, working with an accredited genealogist from the Church of LDS, traveled to Utah, DC, Richmond, and cited all his sources using tax records, probates, wills, and put together kind of our local Carter family history. And named it as an addendum to the history of the Carter family. This is the American genealogical history of the Carter family that identifies 5 or so early, well-documented Carters that immigrated to the colonies, 3 of which are in Virginia. So I was interested in seeing what I could kind of independently verify and just dig up online on Ancestry. And so I'll go back 7 generations tonight. Jim Jr. goes back another 6 and ties us in further on beyond that. So, yeah, full disclosure, it's amateur night tonight, but I'm gonna do the best I can. So you didn't charge him admission. All right, let's get started. So I am Nat Carter. Oh, I cut off half of my thing. Shoot. Anyways, I have 2 younger sisters, Martha and Rachel. Rachel's in Seattle looking at us here. Our father is Earl Carter, right here. Dad is president of Taylor Forbes Equipment, graduate of Farmville High School, Virginia Tech, an amazing speaker. I wish he were up here doing this. This is the best you get for right now. Let's see. So his dad, Earl Sr., Earl Henry Carter, there he is in his Fork Union attire. He was a graduate of Fork Union in '39, I believe. On the right is Earl Sr. with his grandmother, Evie. Earl Sr. Joined the Army, served in World War II in England, France, and Germany. Landed on Omaha Beach in Normandy on D-Day. After the war, came back to Farmville and accepted a job at the local Farmville Dodge dealership, working for Jimmy Forbes. Jimmy Forbes at the time had a new business venture with Roxy Taylor called Taylor Forbes Equipment to sell international agricultural equipment in the Farmville area. So soon thereafter, Earl was tapped to manage the store there. By the late 40s, Earl Sr. was shareholder and I think had about 5 employees. Earl was one of 8 Carter siblings. Jim Jr., whose daughter Sharon I see in the audience tonight. Thanks, cousin Sharon. Charles, who I see son Michael is in the audience tonight. Thanks for coming, Michael and Brenda. JB, Evelyn, George, whose son George here tonight, and his son Steve. Thanks for being here. And then Ray and Uncle Bob. Let's see. So the first 4, can we move that? Okay, the first 4 Carter boys joined the military. Earl Sr., I think, was the first to enlist, and then the other 3 followed suit shortly thereafter, after Japan struck. Jim Jr. and Earl were Army. Let's see here. I remember of Jim Jr., he had a little pond off of Peach Road and Prospect that Dad used to take us fishing up there. Good times. Charles and JB were Marines. Here's Charles and JB, I know cut off their names. So Charles had recently graduated Virginia Tech, and so he went in as a lieutenant, I believe. Is that correct, Mike? And JB went in as a private. Charles was wounded on Saipan. He received a Purple Heart. It was a slight enough wound that he could be put back in the service. Charles and JB would meet up and see each other on Iwo Jima. After the war, JB did attend Virginia Tech, did mapping for the government as a career, married Ray Chick of Prospect, and lived in Orange, Virginia. So that's the first 4. And then we have Aunt Evelyn. She lived in Richmond for a time, Hawaii for a short time, and then moved with her husband, Fred, to Tennessee, Bristol, Tennessee, thank you, where he was a doctor, pediatrician, and set up a practice there. Next, we have George. George played football, actually, at VPI, Fork Union post-grad, was recruited played for Tennessee in the Cotton Bowl as a freshman, played for Wofford College and Kansas State. So George and Ray, here's Ray. Maybe I can minimize that thing. There we go. Okay. George and Ray were apparently inseparable growing up. So Ray had joined what branch of service here? The Air Force. After Ray finished college, he joined the Air Force. Got set up with apparently a good job with a colonel or a general. Had his own private car, and he called his brother George and said, "This is the life, you got to join the Air Force." So sure he did, signed up, stationed George out in Greenland. So as soon as he could move on, George moved to Beckley, West Virginia, or Mullins, I think it is, where he was working at an auto dealership for his uncle on the Word side of the family, his mother's brother, an auto dealership. George and his wife Faye lived there, and that's where George and his brother Randy were born. George would later move to Mechanicsville and work for Lawrence Presler Plymouth as a service manager for many years. Knew Richard Petty. There's some great stories to go along with that. As for Ray, he actually got a job at Ford Motor Company in Detroit. Eventually retired to Florida and ultimately to Uriah, Alabama. And then the youngest, Bobby Carter, probably better known in Farmville for recently retired Red Front Trading Company, excellent golfer, who you may know, Uncle Bobby. He's a Farmville native, Kansas City graduate. In his early career, he actually worked as a teacher with his wife, Betty Jo. He started off in insurance industry in Richmond, and he tells me he was contemplating a career change one day. He ran into an old frat brother of his in downtown Richmond named Dickie Crawley, a free front here in town. And Dickie told him, you got to come to Farmville, open up a clothing store. The market's ready for it. And he did. He opened up the Fashion Post, ran that until 1981, where he sold that. And he also ran the Red Front Trading Company for 30 or 40 years. So when I think of the Carter family of Buckingham, I kind of think of all of these folks. They were all the children of Jim Nat and Mary Works, James Nathaniel Carter. So this part of the presentation, Mr. Hurt actually had posted some of this information on Facebook a while ago, so full credit to him for the Jim Nat portion here. Let's see, Jim Nat and Mary, when they were in their younger married days, they actually lived with Jim Nat's parents on a farm in Shepherds called Black Soot, where they grew tobacco. He and his father bought some shares in the local tobacco warehouses here. Jim Nat would eventually become full owner of the Middle Warehouse. Jim Nat was also on the board of the Planners Bank and Trust. He served on many civic committees, Buckingham County Welfare Board, Draft Board for World War II. Jim Nat would purchase and remodel the old Selden farm off of Route 15, which is now a little horse rink there. I think that's where this picture of the family was taken. And, and also he was a early member of the New Store Presbyterian Church. So there's a little stained glass window there dedicated to the children of Mr. and Mrs. J.N. Carter. The New Store Presbyterian Church honor roll features Earl, Charles, Jim Jr., and J.B. And that is where Jim Nat and his wife are buried. Jim Nat was the only child of George and Evelyn Carter, who are also buried out there at New Store. And so that's where we are right now. This generation, George William Carter and Evelyn, also known as Evie. George lived 1860 to 1933. He grew tobacco on his farm, Black Soot, that we mentioned, in the Shepherds area. Uncle Bobby was kind of telling me that you go to Shepherds, take a left on Francisco, and it would have been one of the first roads on the right. I couldn't find much just in some online searches of Black Soot, but I did find a Black Soot cemetery in the vicinity, actually at the end of Holland Road, so still would have been in the vicinity out there. No family members of mine in there that I can tell, but I think that's the vicinity of where that farm would have been. All right, so let's see if I can get my generation straight. All right, George was, yes, one of 9 siblings, 8 sisters, the only boy. One of which, let's see, Lucy Virginia Carter married a fop. Distant cousin fop in the house tonight. Thank you so much. Their father was James D. Carter. That's his name up there. That's his family over there. Let's see, James D. Got a good picture of him right there. And Mary Ann Hubbard, his wife. We first had him listed on a census in 1850, living in Appomattox County as a laborer, not as a landowner at the time, according to tax records, what Jim Jr. could find in his paperwork. We do know that at some point, James D. moved to Buckingham County, built a house, and started farming, where his son George was born in 1860. James D. was Company K of the 4th Virginia Cavalry, CSA. and he is buried in Prospect at the Kidd Farm. James D. is one of 8 siblings. So that's where we are right now. His father was George Carter. So Jim Nat, George Carter, James D., the George Carter we're talking about right now. 1786 to 1872. For the census data, occupation was farmer, born in Buckingham, had 2 brothers, John and Daniel. George lived with his parents until 1808 when he built a house, the house that this Covington lives in right now, built in 1808. Thank you so much for sending us those pictures. Let's see. According to Jim D's documents here, George Carter was enlisted in the Virginia militia at Fort Norfolk for the War of 1812, discharged July 29th, 1814, received a land grant for 40 acres of service. Married first to Nancy Gill in 1812 and second to Elizabeth Hines in 1850. So let's see, James D's youngest child, Martha, married a Martin Covington, whose descendant would be Julian Covington, Edmund's husband. Okay. Here we have George Carter on census, 1870 census with his family, living in Buckingham, occupation farmer. And there are 2 boxes here on the 1870 census that says cannot read, cannot write. They are checked. Next to Grandpa George Carter. George is buried at Edwina's farm, marked by a field stone. We don't know which one, but we do know it's well tended to. Pretty place out there. So the next link in the chain that I could find was this register of deaths. It was 1872, listing George Carter, cause of death unknown for whatever reason, attested to by one of his sons, Joseph Carter. Parents of George Carter listed as H and S Carter. So from here, I couldn't independently verify the next step in the chain, but Jim Jr. does so in referencing some wills and probates that I just wasn't able to dig up in my online searches, and identifies a Huddlestone Carter. I don't know how to take that top thing out of the way. This says Huddlestone Carter up top. That's from my ancestry page, so I just tagged it as unverified just because I couldn't independently verify that. Thank you so much. But according to...
We'll just leave it right there.
According to Jim Jr.'s addendum, Huddlestone was a Revolutionary War soldier. Let's see, married to S. Jennings, lived in Cumberland and Buckingham counties, Revolutionary War soldier, farmer, and that's references some tax and land records and a pension filed in Buckingham in 1830 for a disability of blindness. He is also referenced different spellings of the name, causing some difficulty to track it down, including Huddleston, Halsey, and Halsey. So from there, Jim Jr. goes back another 6 generations. He ties us into a Thomas Carter place of birth in unknown, time of birth unknown, died 1738 in Goochland County. Jim Jr. then proposes that we could be tied to, there we go. This thing's always in the way. The Giles Carter family of Berkshire 100 Colony and that's Gloucestershire County, England. Let's see. So I know I just wasn't able to find all the information that he found by traveling around. But I know it's tempting to want to make a tie back to one of these early families. This may not necessarily be true. There would have been many Carters that came over not very well documented, could have purchased passage as an indentured servant or something like that. So we could be descended from any number of Carters. So, but it's interesting to think about. We do know that, according to my DNA ethnicity estimate, I'm 96% from the Greater Britain area. So at some point, a Carter immigrated from England, where one of their descendants fathered our George Carter in about 1786. We do know that much. This is just a DNA estimate because I do know on mom's side of the family, I've got some ties to Alsace, France, and Germany through the Hinderlites and Killingers and Wampler. So there were a lot of people that we didn't talk about tonight. When you go back 7 generations, you have 512 great-great-great-great-great-grandparents. So we just talked about 2 of those people tonight. We didn't really talk about the women in the family. Evie, Mary Word, Grandma Dibby, who was a Crawley, my mom, who has a lot of rich history in the family, including her mom's father, Mr. Wilson, who lived right across the street here on Garden Street and worked at this very train station for many years. My awesome wife, Sue, immigrated from Bosnia in 2002 with her family, not speaking a lick of English, and now you would think she's a Carter from Buckingham. So I guess the final thought that I wanted to end on is that a name is just an identifier. It's not necessarily who you are. I started off on this search trying to find out where I came from, who I was, and I think I found that the answer is not necessarily here. I think the answer comes from right here. Only you can determine who you are. So I want to thank you all so much for having me, giving you a chance to speak that.
We've got a gift for you. And we handed that gift from the table on there. I can't get over that. Yes. These young ladies, well, one of them was here. There she is. These young ladies